round of 32, but today a far more familiar opponent lies in wait at a familiar venue for City. This was the place where they beat Oakley in the round of 32. Now they're hosts here, and they'll be hoping that those are the only pieces of history that repeat themselves today, as they've been dumped out of the Cup by Wellington in each of the last two meetings here at this venue. Good to see a travelling contingent of Wellington fans hoping that they can bring up the hat-trick against City and knock them out of the Cup once more. There is, of course, a big quarter-final spot up for grabs, and, of course, for Melbourne City, a colossal shot at revenge. So it should be a really exciting standalone clash as we see a couple of members of the Melbourne City bench make their way across the pristine surface here at Jack Edwards. Teams just moments away from coming out onto the field. And a really healthy crowd. Beautiful weather brewing here for a big encounter, for which Melbourne City have made two changes from their round of 32 side, and they are two big additions into the lineup. Aziz Bayic is into the back four. A big welcome back to him after 9 years in Europe. He's returned to the club that gave him his start. A very happy homecoming. While the A-League's first Moroccan, Hamza Saki, starts in midfield for his first game in a Melbourne City shirt, alongside former Wellington Phoenix player Steven Ugarkovic. Leading the line, of course, is Jamie McLaren. As the teams make their way out onto the field here at Jack Edwards, let's get into the lineup for Wellington Phoenix. Starting in between the sticks for Giancarlo Italiano's side, Alex Paulson. He was, of course, the hero of the 2021 Australia Cup meeting between these two sides, making 3 saves in the penalty shootout. Scott Wootton is into the back four to replace the injured Mohamed Al-Tai. Well, there is a start for the hero of the round of 32, young Josh Rudland, who scored in the 119th minute against Peninsula Power, starts up top alongside Polish hitman Oscar Zavada. So a very strong side for both teams. Wellington, of course, missing a couple of major names. There is a youthful zeal to their bench as the players get lined up, and how good is it to see Aziz Bayic back in a Melbourne City shirt for the first time in 9 years and 5 months. His last game against Wellington Phoenix all the way back in 2014. David Williams, an ex-Phoenix player, scored a hat-trick on that day. And speaking of boyhood clubs, here's Lucas Kelly-Heald, one of Wellington Phoenix's new young talents, signed to a landmark 4-year deal, the longest in club history. He gets back-to-back starts and is wearing a famous number in the Knicks ranks for defenders, the former 18 shirt worn by Ben Sigmund back in the day. Of course, Sarpreet Singh, another young star that Kelly-Heald will hope to emulate, donning the number 18. So we have the coin tosses getting underway in the centre circle. The two captains getting ready to do battle for a place in the round of 16. Handshakes all round between Jamie McLaren and Alex Rufer, as there's Rado Vidicic, of course, no stranger to the Wellington Phoenix, not least because he has coached against them a number of times, but a former assistant as well at the Knicks, short-lived, mind you, under Dario Kalazic. But this a really big test in what will be his first full season in charge of Melbourne City. There's the man in the middle for today, Lockie Keevers, who was a 4th official back in the round of 32 for Adelaide United's tie with Northcote City, the NPL 2 outfit. He's assisted by 4th official Yanni Zizas today. And there is Giancarlo Italiano, the new head coach of Wellington Phoenix. He has taken charge against A-League's opposition before, back when then coach Ufuk Talay contracted COVID-19 in 2022, but this is his first chance against an A-League's team as the full-time head coach. As the teams are in readiness here at Jack Edwards Reserve, all set to go underway here in Victoria. A big round of 16 clash, and joining myself, Lockie Flanagan, on behalf of 10 Play For It, is Matilda's legend, Melissa Barbieri. Bubs, great to have your company on a beautiful day here in the southeast of Victoria.
It's absolutely wonderful to be here on this sunny afternoon, watching some really good football being played, and these guys are going to actually take this really to heart today, because it is one of the games in the lead up to the actual A-League season. But of course, it's another chance at getting a trophy. And Australia Cup always seems to sit nicely on the trophy cabinet if you get to win one.
Absolutely. Melbourne City, of course, well versed in the art of winning an Australia Cup. It's been a while now, 7 years since that Tim Cahill winner against Sydney FC in the 2016 final. And City have started with some early zip. It's Callum Talbot back to his more comfortable position of right back today. It was filled by Jordan Hall last week, but the return of Aziz Bayic means that he can go back to the preferred slot. That's a good interception from Pennington, who hits the deck in the middle. No whistle from Lockie Keevers. And here is Aziz Bayic. Feels fitting, the boy who left when this club was Melbourne Heart returns in red and white. Lecky driving at Barbarouses, inside for Bayic, an early chance for him, laying it back for Arslan, but the shot is blocked en route. And picking up the pieces, Steven Ugarkovic. Melbourne City really taking control of the early runnings. Wooten. Paulson forced into the clearance. And Zavada, well won in the air, but the reinforcements supplied in the form of Curtis Good. It's been a breakneck start for Melbourne City, Bubs.
It has. They usually play a very, very high line, a very pressing style of play, so they'd be able to put a lot of pressure on Paulson in goals, but he's done fantastically in the opening minutes just to, you know, diffuse any sort of danger in that 6-yard box, opting to go long on numerous occasions, but that just means City get the ball back really quickly.
One of their new men, Jokolic, inside to Lecky, lovely exchange of pass, and the cross inside for McLaren in the middle was just a fraction offline. Nice little 1-2 sequence between Lecky and Martin Jokolic, the Croatian-Australian national who's technically eligible for the Socceroos. Born in Šibenik, Croatia, but his father lived in Australia for 15 years. Really is the world game, isn't it?
It is. And Jokolic can see that Jamie McLaren really wants the ball direct to his feet in those situations. Jokolic tried to play in between the goalkeeper and Jamie McLaren when, really he wants that at pace at his feet.
Picked up nicely by Costa Barbarouses. He was, of course, the man who scored the opener for Wellington last year in the round of 16, as Alex Paulson had to be really careful. Jamie McLaren bringing a really aggressive front press, and Wellington have been committed to playing it around at the back. They were very nearly caught out that time around. Bubs, obviously no stranger to dealing with those sort of situations, being part of the City group, playing out of the back as a goalkeeper is a must. But what would be running through the mind of a young keeper in Alex Paulson in a moment like that?
Well, it's all about, I know how you want me to play and the style we want to play, but I also don't want to cop any goals. So his decision making in those sort of minutes is really critical. And in the opening 10, you really want to go a little bit longer, diffuse that sort of pressure, turn teams around as much as possible and get them out of your, defensive third.
It's not exactly nerve settling for a 21-year-old, is it? And he's being asked again to deal with things at the ball at feet. This time it's broken a little bit more kindly for the Phoenix. Kraev uses the ball in the air, and here's Hamza Saki, goes down under the challenge of Pennington. Kraev for Rufer. It's a really hot football at the moment. Kelly Heald. Arslan just a bit overzealous in the challenge. Really interesting, the tempo here for the Phoenix. It has nearly proved their undoing it on a couple of occasions, but every free kick taken quickly. They want to move this ball and move it at speed, don't they?
It's nice to see, actually, like when they have the chance to put their foot on it and play They're trying to find pockets in which to play through this Melbourne City press. And if they can find a way out, they can find some vacant space on the opposite side.
Well, a whirlwind 5 minutes here at Jack Edwards, and a first forward foray for Wellington. Ugarkovic, the cool head, back into the grateful arms of Jamie Young, who, well, Alex Paulson at the other end has been so busy. Jamie Young, that's his first bit of action for the day after 6 minutes gone. Nuno Reis to Ugarkovic. 27 appearances in his solitary season for the Knicks last year. Only one goal, which, well, ironically enough, came against Melbourne City. Funny how football can work out sometimes. And I wonder how Giancarlo Italiano is feeling that the first opening phases of this game have worked out for his side, because there have been a couple of nervy moments. Kelly Heald whips it over the top for Rudland. The ball was already out of play before the Phoenix youngster could latch onto it. Throw for Melbourne City. Really interesting to see the amount of faith that new Wellington Phoenix head coach Giancarlo Italiano has placed into the youth stocks of the Phoenix. Josh Rudland, a great example. Debut off the bench in the round of 32 and his first start in the round of 16. Not without merit, of course. He was the winning goal scorer. Free kick taken quickly by Melbourne City. Arslan, a German import. Cross for Reich. And wide now for Yakorlish. Feels like that opening 5-minute frenzy has perhaps settled down a fraction. And now it's Melbourne City who will take the turn to keep it on the deck. It's at least from this distance, Bubs, not a bad deck to be keeping it on. The Jack Edwards surface is looking pretty pristine at the moment.
Very pristine. It's interesting to note that Jamie Young will have to play a different style of football playing for Melbourne City, coming from a Western United front that would play long a lot of the time. So you can actually see that Ugarkovic is sitting in a nice position in central midfield, but Jamie Young not deciding to play him that little bit of courage to play through that press from Wellington. Just not coming naturally to Jamie Young. His option is, you know, trying to go a little bit more comfortable with the centre-backs.
You can see here, even as they're trying to build out from the back, Jamie Young's still pretty deep. One of the many new faces at Melbourne City that will have to take a bit of time to integrate. He is one who hasn't had so much of a problem so far in Tolgay Arslan, winning back possession and thumped away by Finn Sermon. An emphatic clearance. And there's Alex Paulson and there he is out of nowhere, Jamie McLaren through the corner of the screen. Any goalkeeper would have a heart in mouth in that sort of a situation, even one as experienced as yourself, Bubs.
Yeah. Well, you know he's coming. It's just that the options aren't there to play out and you've had to go long.
And you know Jamie McLaren is fast, but perhaps you don't realise he's that fast. Turnover here. Yakorlish on the drive across for the aforementioned McLaren. Gets the eyes up, the cross takes a deflection, and Melbourne City will get a corner, the first of the afternoon. We don't often see Jamie McLaren take up a wide position and try to turn provider, but Wellington Phoenix got the bodies in the way. And after 10 minutes played at Jack Edwards, we get our first corner of the afternoon. It's a high ball towards the back post, flicked away by Kelly Heald. Bounced into the air. Raish brings it down. Arslan. Double deflection is going to break kindly for Josh Rudland. They're not getting much chance to breathe on the ball at the moment, Wellington. It's our first corner of the afternoon, but it's probably double digits already for clearances for the Knicks.
You know, they're trying to keep possession when they've got the ball, but just under that pressure from Melbourne City, they want to dispatch, get the ball up the field, but just nobody there to hold on to it for long enough.
The press has come up trumps here, though. Rudland receives from Kriev. Pennington wants the ball in behind, doesn't receive. Rudland finds the shooting angle, and unfortunately, the deflection finds the midriff of the referee, Lockie Keevers. So, frustrating, but momentary end to Wellington's attack.
You can see the ricochet bounces off and hits Lockie Keevers, but will resume possession with Melbourne City. It's interesting to note, yeah, if that had kept on playing, it might have fallen to a Wellington Phoenix player. Wellington Phoenix might be able to pick up possession here, but it's the transition moments that they can capitalise on against Melbourne City. They press high, which means they leave themselves open to that transition moment.
Rudland uses out to the combination of Raish and Hamzasaki in the end. It'll be a deep throw for the Phoenix. So Callum Talbot starting to be called into action more frequently against the youngster Josh Rudland, who's had a really confident start as they go long in the direction of Kraev. Controlled by Rudland. Knocked well clear by Jamie McLaren, who marshals the troops. Lucas Kelly Heald. Would you believe? Person who was just on your screen, standing at 198 centimetres tall, is just 18 years of age. One of the really highly touted youngsters across the ditch. Zavada, in his own right, highly touted, but not in the youth stakes, certainly in the goal-scoring stakes, though. Barbarousis couldn't collect that one. Saki eventually is going to get the decision break in his favour. There's been a few nippy fouls here and there, that's for sure. Curtis Good doesn't like what he sees further afield, has to retreat to the safety of centre-back partner Nuno Raish. There's a enthusiastic press from Wellington. And City have just about picked the gap. Bajic with a chance to drive, turn on his jets. Going to double team him. Barbarousis and Tim Payne working really well to eventually regain possession, and a free kick for the Phoenix.
Well, that's the quality that Melbourne City have. If they can get the ball to Ugarkovic sitting in that number 6 position, he has time and space. It's just hard to find him because such a great positioning from, you know, the Wellington defence. But once you find him, he can swing a ball all the way out to Bajic, who pushes high up the field, and leave. Melbourne City like to leave 3 at the back and get Bajic all the way up the field and play as a wing back in attack.
Certainly, he's a two-way defender, Aziz Bajic, but it's that attacking excellence that saw him rise to prominence all those years ago. There's a young boy in a Melbourne Heart shirt, of course, discarded by Victory and then plucked out of the NPL by Melbourne Heart. Melbourne City will get a free kick in a pretty promising position after coming together. Just about 25 yards from goal. It's Phoenix who will set their sights on striking from the set piece. Decent spot for a right footer this. Work to do for Curtis Good. You can see he's got the arms out, marshalling the troops. A line across the edge of the box for this free kick. Payne towards the back post. The last header was from Raish, and then Pennington strikes on the half volley. Melbourne City's defensive wall doing its job. You can see how quickly they bring the numbers forward. That was really composed from Kelly Heald. Wow. Great work from the young defender. Kraev and Saki go head-to-head on the touchline. Bulgarian and Moroccan players going head-to-head. Don't think we've ever heard that before in the history of the A-Leagues. So we see that shot from Pennington, well blocked by Melbourne City. Rutland is just a fraction offside on the left-hand side for the Knicks. So we tick past 17 minutes played here at Jack Edwards Reserve. That, well, hairy opening for the Phoenix all of a sudden feels like a world away. Rufer back to Alex Paulson, and we just spoke it into existence, back into action, but of course able to use his hands. That's a far more relaxed situation. Zavada, a long way from home. Yakulish. Iceland wins the 50-50 in the middle, and Rutland is chasing really aggressively to try and win back possession for the Phoenix. Zavada, long-limbed though he may be, just beyond his capabilities.
Wellington Phoenix actually playing some really nice football up until a certain stage, but then the higher players are still staying far too far away from the build-up, which means that long pass at the end is what's undoing them at the seams. Right at that final moment where you can really find a little bit of space further up the field and just lose possession.
You can see there the total passes in the final third, 26 for Melbourne City. Well clear of Wellington at the moment. I wonder how many of those would have been just inside the opening 10 minutes. Wellington have settled, but as you quite rightly pointed out, Bubs, there's a lot of nice play until that front third area at the moment. Ugarkovic sprays one in the Corlish direction. Safety first from Lucas Kelly Heald, who heads it behind for, well, in the end, a bit of a cheap Melbourne City corner. It's going to be coming in from the right-hand side once again. Hamza Saki, the Moroccan, the man to take. Plenty of numbers dispersed towards the back post as it's knocked away easily at the first time of asking by the towering Oscar Zavada. Of course, it was a corner at that end that this time a couple of weeks ago in the round of 32, Melbourne City conceded inside 30 seconds. One of, but not quite the fastest goals in Australia Cup history. Can you believe 30 seconds is not the fastest goal in the history of the Cup?
I can actually. Seen some howlers.
It's been a far more calm and composed and altogether less chaotic start for City. played themselves into a little bit of trouble here, though. Barbarousis picking up the pieces. Zavada in behind, and well, he's just fluffed his lines there, Oscar Zavada. That was a little bit uncharacteristic from Wellington's leading goal scorer last season. Let's have another look at this.
It's a great ball in by Barbarousis, and I feel like the pressure from the Melbourne City defenders just had him take it early on his left foot. He could have perhaps let it run onto his right and shot a cross goal and actually get something that Jamie Young needed to defend.
You could see what he was trying to do for sure. The old phrase, wrap your boot behind the ball, comes to mind. I don't think he got much in the way of wrapping was the only issue.
Yeah, no purchase on it.
Curtis Good. He's the most experienced Melbourne City player in terms of club appearances. Now that Scott Jamieson is taken up the coaching role. And Dick Pennington has taken up a yellow card early doors, and it might have come at some pretty significant personal cost for Callum Talbot. We can see him writhing around in pain at the moment. Let's have another glance of the incident that led to that yellow card.
Yeah, Ugurkovic finds Talbot on the run through, and Pennington just knows that if Talbot breaks away here, so he tries to get a foot on it to intercept, but certainly a late challenge and quite a length up the shin of Talbot, and it would certainly be an uncomfortable tackle at the best of times, but he was in full flight, so no doubt the tackle itself might not have been such a ferocious one, but because he was in full flight going, you know, upwards of, you know, they can run something like 30k an hour at the best of times, so he was only just getting started. That's why it probably hurts that little bit more.
Well, the interesting part of it is we've all had the privilege of seeing it a couple of times played back, as he was clutching at the shin, which was nowhere on that sort of, you know, shin lower knee area, which was nowhere near any of the contact from Pennington actually occurred. So never feeling too great when a player is clutching at a potentially injured area that is nowhere near where they're actually fouled. But Callum Talbot, he doesn't look like he has full range of motion, doesn't look too pleased, but he'll do what he can until you imagine Rado Vidicic will call on a substitute. Of course, Jordan Hall did start at right back for Melbourne City against Oakley in the round of 32. And Wellington are trying to pick that gap in behind. Zavada up against Curtis Good. Strong physical battle as the teammates materialise for the Knicks. Rufa and Payne hits first time. And well, no mercy from the Wellington Phoenix.
No, expose that area that Talbot is not occupying after that injury. He's still struggling a little bit. Those kind of ones that you want to jog off or try and, you know, keep moving and see how much real damage is done, but he's still uncomfortable.
Tim Payne had that earlier shot from distance. He's going to be called into throwing duties this time around. Pennington up against Bajic, who used the body well. It's another Socceroo to call Melbourne City home this season. Of course, it is a very different place than the city environment that he left the club for Bursaspor back nearly a decade ago now, but there were some familiar faces on his return in the form of those fellow national team players in Jamie McLaren and Matthew Leckie. Always makes settling in a little bit easier, doesn't it? Long ball in search of Zavada, just over the top of his noggin, easily into the arms of Jamie Young. Beach. Under pressure from Payne. Just sort of ran out of ideas as he tried to launch the ball potentially in behind for Jamie McLaren. Raish, he's had a lot of the ball in this game so far. Callum Talbot looks to be slowly returning to full flight. It's fired across in the beige direction. You can see he's maybe having a little bit of trouble with that switch of play. The sun directly in his eyes as it comes over the top.
Yeah, and the distance of the pass means that Wellington can recover in that space quite easily.
Lovely flick from Arslan. Leckie through the legs. Matthew Leckie, well, he done so well up until the moment that arrived to let fly with the right boot, but the Wellington Phoenix defence closed like the Grim Reaper, a thief in the night, just stealing the ball off him.
Yeah, Rufer did well to get back and put enough pressure on Leckie, but he did take his time that little bit too much.
It's a lovely shimmy. Everything leading up to the would-be shot was so pleasing on the eye from Melbourne City. It counts for nothing if you can't get the shot away eventually. Heavy touch from Payne. Barbarousis. It's a really critical phase as a high boot from Alex Rufer. Melbourne City not happy about it by any stretch, but Lockie Keever's comparatively unmoved. Did they have much of a case there, Bubs? I might come back to that thought in a moment, because your Kolish has picked up possession on the right-hand side. It's the first man, Martin Yukolish, to wear the number 44 for Melbourne City since Ross McCormack. And if he plays half as well as the Scotsman, he'll be very well liked by the Melbourne City fandom. You can see Melbourne City 56%, 66 rather, percent of possession, starting to regain that early control of this game. Saki with time to move and go, but had his pocket picked by Božidar Krajev. Rufer. Over the top it goes for Josh Rudland. And again, I think we can just see a couple of examples of the age or lack thereof of Josh Rudland, just being called offside on a couple of occasions where perhaps he ought to not have been.
Yeah, young players always seem to think that the picture is changing a lot slower than it actually is. Got to really have a sense of, eyes at the back of your head, always scanning, always knowing what's happening around you, and being offside is just testament to that inexperience.
It's been a while since Aziz Beige has been in the A-Leagues, but clearly Wellington know what he's all about. They get plenty of defensive numbers across to cover him when he tries to go on those bombing runs.
Well, we keep talking about him in the sense of the A-Leagues, but he is a Socceroo. He holds a lot of respect in this nation and around the world. So you can see, Matthew Leckie here also getting the attention he deserves as a Socceroo, and that level of respect. He's not going to have any time and space on the ball whatsoever.
Ugarkovic flicks it over to Callum Talbot. It's a really inventive pass to nearly find Bajic. Knocked away by Tim Payne. Krajev keeps it clear of Arslan, and I think that was pretty clever. I think he knew that he wasn't going to get a lot of fortune on that right-hand side. A free kick, probably a pretty good eventuality. Paulson. Again, McLaren brings the chase. This time he survives with a far greater margin for error than previously.
Yeah, well, that's all to do with how much his players are supporting him. You know, I have a lot of confidence in myself if I've got 2 or 3 yellow players around me that want the ball. But if you see them running away, it certainly puts that added pressure on the young goalkeeper.
Barbarousis to Alex Rufer. The captain, the stalwart, the fan favourites. Alex Rufer at the Knicks. Kelly Heald, a man who could well become a fan favourite for the Phoenix in years to come. Pennington. That's the right idea.
Yeah.
Over the top for Zavada, but the execution slightly awry.
It's almost like they have this tendency to go backwards every time they have the ball. Then Pennington finds himself in time and space. And he does have a touch backwards, but then obviously finds himself being able to face forward. And it's just a lack of, you know, passing accuracy at the end of the day. Just go straight to Jamie Young.
Here's a breakaway for Aziz Baich. Pennington was calm. Barbarousis was clever. It's been a stop-start affair. Costa Barbarousis has been in the thick of a lot of those niggly little fouls. The whistle has had a workout from Lockie Keevers so far in the first half.
Yeah, that's the trade-off for a high-pressing team. Lots of fouls committed.
Kelly Heald this time the beneficiary of those minor fouls that the press can present. And in the end, he's just played it into the body of Marin Jakolic. Gains a bit of meterage. Missed in the air by Rudland. Talbot and a clever body feint from Ugarkovic. He's going to send it back from whence it came. Over the top for Jakolic. It's a challenge and whips the ball back to Talbot. Ugarkovic again now. What can he make happen against his old side? Seems to be a problem that both sides are suffering at the moment, Bubs. Just a difficulty breaking the lines, although that is much better nearly from Melbourne City.
Yeah, Melbourne City like to play in areas, lots of numbers around the ball, and then expose the team on the other side.
Lockie Keevers isn't quite going to allow Melbourne City to engage in multi-ball from the throat, as it was a really nicely weighted ball over the top in the direction of Matthew Leckie, but he couldn't quite seize upon it. It's been the difference at the moment, those tiny touches. Jakolic into the middle. Saki gets up, so too does Payne. And his header, the telling one, but retrieved by Arslan. Twisting and turning, scooping one into the box. McLaren the target. Wellington clear lines in the air. Rudland ran out of real estate. Tough one for the 19-year-old. 6 goals in 11 appearances for Phoenix reserve side in the Central League. You'll see quite a number of those reserve players on the bench today. The likes of Kaylan Newen, who of course got the assist for the late winner against Penn Power. Fergus Gillian as well, and a really young player in 17-year-old Luke Supik as well. Saki. Bajic. Patient play nearly ends with a pick out of Jamie McLaren. Kraev is directing the traffic, and Pennington turns on a dime and finds a great return ball to Kraev. this perhaps a promising breakaway for the Knicks. Rutland wants to get onto that right foot. Back to Kelly Heald. He's going to go for the early cross. Ugarkovic first at the scene of the crime. Kelly Heald retrieves. And Pennington had City players closing down on him from either direction. And in context, that's probably a smart foul from the Knicks, but that was really nice play from Kelly Heald. 198 centimetres tall, as we've mentioned, but he moves like a far more diminutive player. So you get another look at that foul, of which Tolgay Arslan has won quite a few today.
Well, that's the smarts of a left back who's caught out of position. You got to see that sort of foul happen in order to stop the breakaway.
Lecky tries to get onto the right, just left the ball behind, but bombing on was Bajic. Into the middle it goes. Kelly Heald only as far as a truck on the volley. Oh, Stephen Ugarkovic. A moment of inspiration against this old side. And the Phoenix are stunned into silence. It set up for him perfectly on the edge of the box. It took a deflection en route, but Stephen Ugarkovic, wow.
It was the flying volley from Ugarkovic, but I have a funny feeling that will be credited to Arslan in the middle, as that came off his hand, gave it a really wicked deflection, which caused it to dip over the Wellington goalkeeper in Paulson.
Well, it was a tie that you dare say needed a game breaker perhaps, and Stephen Ugarkovic, with perhaps the aid of the back of Tolgay Arslan, has delivered exactly that. So work for the Phoenix to do now.
It might just give him a little bit of confidence to go forward in possession here.
And they've picked up Kraev in behind. The instant reply doesn't quite arrive. Jamie Young down confidently to his right.
Best time to score against a team is when they've gone one up. It's that first 5 minutes after scoring a goal that you need to be tight in defence, and Wellington certainly know that going forward in quick succession, it does offer a shot on target, and Jamie Young this time has to do something about it.
How do you settle the sort of not nerves, but the feelings of shock if you're the Phoenix? Because I don't think it was a situation they necessarily expected to concede from. They did seem a bit stunned after that happened.
Well, we always say that's football. That is football. You never know what might happen. You just got to get yourself back involved and do the next good thing. You can certainly see that ricochet of Tolgay Arslan's head. He was actually feeling it.
Here is Arslan trying to go direct once more. And I think Detective Bubbs may well be right. The last touch off Stephen Ugarkovic, or sorry, from Stephen Ugarkovic's shot off the body of Tolgay Arslan, who now has 3 goals in 2 games in a Melbourne City shirt, but certainly the third a stroke of fortune by comparison to the previous 2.
I love how Ugarkovic was like, no, that was me, all me.
He certainly celebrated. The sell was quite there. He certainly convinced the ground that was his goal, even though the stat sheet in years to come may well give it to the German midfielder. Barbarousis. What kind of a response do Wellington have? This is promising play, but the pass into the final third. Stop me if you've heard it before. Quite working for the Phoenix. Good harassing from Josh Rutland, encouraged by Giancarlo Italiano. And indeed, he does win the ball back. Kelly Heald. Send it into the mixer. It's allowed to bounce. Zavada brings it down. Not quite able to gain full control of the ball. As we make our way towards the halftime interval. Great to see a healthy crowd in the stands getting around Melbourne City in the southeast. Yakulish. Elegant with the ball at feet. Arslan turns and tries to feed Talbot. It's happened a couple of times for Melbourne City. It looked very pretty until that ball into the middle, as we see. It just slipped under the studs of Oscar Zavada earlier. Yakulish. Nice pass for McLaren. Takes a little touch. Pennington. Well, that was a really nice first touch. Not a bad second either, but a strong challenge from Matthew Leckie, doing his defensive due diligence. Yakulish couldn't confound Kelly Heald, and there's one back possession regardless. Seems as though that goal has just helped the game to kick back into gear. It was in a bit of a holding pattern for a good 10 or 15. Reticent to lean into cliche, but goals do change games. Talbot. Bayich is picked out beautifully this time with the switch, but he showed a fraction too much of the ball to Tim Payne. And Barbarousis is on the move. A really promising run. Pennington, can they finish the half with a wet sail, Wellington? They won't from that attack. Nicholas Pennington, try as he might to regain control of the football. Couldn't do it without bringing Matthew Leckie to ground.
Yeah, Barbarousis just travelling inward, trying to get Pennington on the ball so that he can have a touch and maybe slot in a teammate. But Pennington just can't get it under his spell.
You see both teams operating above 80% for pass accuracy. A lot of that probably has been around their respective back fours. It seems as though they'll definitely both be taking a possession first based game plan into the Isuzu Youth A-League season, which is just around the corner. Of course, we expected that from Melbourne City, but didn't quite know what to expect from Giancarlo Italiano, who has work to do here. And his side have defending to do as Arslan, a heavy touch. Pennington can pick up the pieces. And a good interception from Ugarkovic, the two players who combined to score City's opener. Bayich. Back to Tolgai Arslan. Threads the needle. This is lovely play. And the shot on the half volley from Matthew Leckie ends in the breadbasket of Alex Paulson, but, well, ooh la la, that's all I'll say. I think he's a very grateful man, Alex Paulson, to have watched that shot into his arms. Would have been a goal for the highlight reel. Might have bulged the back of the net. Pennington. Couple of questions of a handball unrewarded by Lockie Kevers, as the fourth official Yanni Zizis adds 2 minutes onto this first half. So Melbourne City on track to head to the sheds in the ascendancy, and something they haven't been able to say the previous two times they've faced the Phoenix in the Australia Cup. Costa Barbarousas's goal was the difference at halftime back in the round of 32 in 2021. As is Bayich, hoping to start a move that will see Melbourne City double their money. On the basis of what we've seen today, a second would put them in a really commanding position. Lecky. Arslan across to the left. Saki. Rufa trying to close down the space. And Saki is going to go early. Kelly Heald prods it away. It's a corner, and there is enough stoppage time left in the game for Lockie Kevers to allow Melbourne City to take it. It's the first from the opposite side, the grandstand side here at Jack Edwards. Be the same taker though. Sasaki with two arms aloft. Sends an in-swinger. It's punched away by Paulson. Bajic retrieves back to the other goalkeeper now. Is there time for one last attack? The answer is no. Into the halftime sheds we go at Jack Edwards Reserve. And advantage Melbourne City. Courtesy, not entirely, but certainly in a significant portion to that man, Steven Ugarkovic. His half volley on the edge of the box, deflecting off the back of Tolgai Arslan. And that is the difference here at Jack Edwards after 45 minutes in the round of 16. It's Melbourne City 1, Wellington Phoenix 0. Let's have a look at the first half highlights, and there is a very significant one that we'll get to later. For now, a free kick for the Phoenix, who have been a bit askew in attack so far, Bubs.
Yeah, I mean, you know, sporadic in their adventures forward, but, you know, it was on target. Shots just blocked well by Melbourne City.
And that was the difference. You were eagle-eyed picking out that touch en route, but take nothing away from Steven Ugarkovic. That is still some effort of athleticism.
Yeah, athletic volley. Even if it does hit a player on the way through, it certainly was on target. Just the wicked deflection makes it hard for Paulson to read the flight. You can actually see him diving low, and then the ball rises up over his head.
They did continue to press their case for a second, and this would have been, well, a goal for the ages.
Yeah, a lovely volley on the turn is always nice.
We can see, despite the possession dominance for Melbourne City, they haven't been able to make it click too many times going forward. It's actually Wellington who lead the XG by a fraction, level on shots, but crucially, Melbourne City have made it count in the one place where it matters, all things said and done. Melbourne City with the one goal advantage over Wellington Phoenix. And work to do for Giancarlo Italiano. We can see a couple of former A-Leagues players in the wing. There's Alessandro Diamanti, Scott Galloway, Fahid Ben Kalfalar is talking to Michael Petrillo. That is an A-League's who's who right there. So the stars have turned up at Jack Edwards Reserve to watch this round of 16 clash. And at the moment, they've seen a first 45 minutes of action that has Melbourne City in a 1-0 lead. Whether or not they hold on to it in the second half, well, we'll find out after a break. Welcome back to Jack Edwards Reserve in Oakley, Victoria. Melbourne City and Wellington Phoenix meeting for the third consecutive time in the Australia Cup. But this time it looks as though it's going to, as it currently stands at least, break a little bit more kindly for Melbourne City. They've been dumped out of the Cup by the Knicks in 2021 and 2022. But here in 2023 at halftime, still plenty of football to be played, of course. It's Melbourne City who hold the 1-goal advantage, courtesy, well, of a combination of Melbourne City players. It was a shot hit emphatically on the volley by Steven Ugarkovic. There was a little bit of a touch off Tolgay Arslan, so the dubious goals panel are still running the numbers, but the end result is that Melbourne City are in a 1-0 lead. There is plenty of work to do for Wellington Phoenix as we head into a big second 45 and potentially extra time to come. And interestingly, despite being the team in the ascendancy, it's Melbourne City who make the half-time change. Frenchman Samuel Suprayan is on for his Melbourne City debut. And he comes on in place of Callum Talbot, who of course did sustain a bit of an injury in the first half. As we get the second underway, Wellington with it all to do, but just a 1-goal margin. They played themselves into momentary trouble, but Sermon is able to side-foot it away. Pleasure to have your company here in the second half on 10 plate. Lockie Flanagan and Melissa Barbieri taking you through the second half, as we were in the first two. But Bubs, great to have you back. Melbourne City with the advantage. What do Wellington have to do to get back into this game?
Well, we can see by the X factor that they could have scored a couple more against Melbourne City. Their run of play doesn't mean that they get a lot of possession, but it's in fact the times they get into that front third, can they actually pull the trigger and cause Jamie Young to either make a save, parry the ball and finish, or score straight off the bat. But getting the ball into that front third has been troublesome for them. They are trying to play some brave football in between the lines, but of course under immense pressure from Melbourne City, they'll find it hard.
Started City with plenty of zeal, and they're going to start the second half with a free kick as well.
These are the sorts of area that Melbourne City will have a set piece under their wing. As we see Lecky try and play the ball forward to Tolgay Arslan. He gets caught by the Wellington defender. This is dangerous for Wellington Phoenix. They'll have to defend with their lives here, because, you know, if Melbourne City do go that second goal up, it'll make their job just that little bit harder.
Of course, both of these sides as well are only early into the pre-season. Does that, the fact that they haven't managed too many minutes come into this second half? You can only imagine it does.
It does, especially if it goes into extra time.
Saki to deliver. It's a really nicely shaped delivery. But Wellington equal to the task, repelling for the moment. Falls at the feet of Aziz Bage, who recycles it. It's knocked down into the middle, and Arslan strikes on the volley. And it was definitely him this time, and the end result was a comfortable save from Alex Paulson. But we're just increasingly starting to get those flashes of how much quality Melbourne City's new players have got at their disposal.
And that's more, you know, the fact they haven't been playing together all that much, you know, along with the fitness, but in terms of how to play the ball that each other likes or appreciates. And once again, that ball just sat up nicely for Tolgay Arslan, and he does get a shot off quite nicely. But Paulson obviously up to the challenge.
Certainly see that he's a technician on the ball, Tolgay Arslan. It's a very strong challenge through the back by Nuno Reis, who launches an apologetic hand in the direction of referee Lockie Keevers.
And in the absence of, you know, Callum Talbot.
Easy for you to say.
He's had to go out into the right side of defence there.
Zavada. Back to Alex Rufer. Commanding header from the new Frenchman Samuel Suprain. Total of 18 fouls so far in this game. I think we just added another to the tally. Wellington Phoenix have certainly not been afraid to throw their body about. Back by Suprain in a bit of an unorthodox fashion, but the header from Curtis Good is going to bring it to a head. Suprain, of course, didn't feature in the round of 32. Was managing a little bit of an injury. Melbourne City took their time with him. They're not wasting any time getting on the move here. Payne eventually kills a promising City attack dead, but they are moving in waves at the moment. Arslan, he's upended. And much to his surprise, and I dare say his disappointment, the whistle from Lockie Keevers never eventuates.
He's picked up possession right in the front third. And the ball travels forward, but it's actually Tolgan Arslan actually makes contact with the defender rather than the other way around. So it's probably why it's not a foul.
Rufer. It's going to be coming back in the opposite direction. The yellow shirts at the defensive end have been rather busy early in this second half, which is not exactly what they need. Just confirming that substitution. Samuel Suprain onto the field at halftime in place of Callum Talbot. Kraev. They really need him to stand up in the second half there. Bulgarian star, 7 goals, 2 assists in his first season of Isuzu Ute A-League last year. And really one of the keys for any hopes Wellington have of making a big tilt at the upcoming campaign.
Yeah, he will be important. His partnership alongside Zavada will be important for Wellington Phoenix, because those wide players in Barbarouses and Josh Rudlin, you know, they really need to occupy that space out wide, and it's that ability to pick up possession and draw the centre-backs out will open that forward portion of the front third that allows you to stick the ball in the back of the net. But if you don't want the ball and you don't face forward when you pick it up, you have to be bold and dangerous in there.
Ugarkovic sprays it in the Lecky direction. Couldn't regain possession for his side despite all manner of endeavour. Lockie Keevers has just brought play to a halt here. He's going to go over and have a chat with his linesman on the far side, and I believe that may be the match commissioner as well. Whether this is an issue with something in and around the field, or something else altogether, remains to be seen. Just having listened to a bit of the chatter in the technical area here on the broadcast side. Sound as though there might be a potential issue with what you can see on your screen right there. There is a drone flying overhead here at Jack Edwards. It has been high in the sky for the entire game so far.
Yeah, I actually saw that in the first half, and I thought it's just way of a couple of teams trying to, you know, do their analysis.
Is that
it's not ours.
Is that an opposition drone? Is it friend or foe? I guess that's the question. Either way, the match commissioner, the referees, not best pleased about it. But it is it's a public venue. Anyone can attend. Is this perhaps an overseas scout? Melbourne City, of course, have got Asian Champions League commitments. They couldn't send someone down, so get the drone in to watch the team footage.
Yeah, you can only get so much footage from the cameras.
Your guess is as good as mine. Zavada back to goal. Play back underway. And McLaren breaking forward. Cross takes a touch on the way through, but it's going to fall at the back stick to Yakorlish anyway. Lovely flick for Nuno Reis, who's getting forward, putting an inviting ball into the area. Wellington have been equal to most of what City have sent in as Leckie strikes low. And Paulson was alert, agile, and took all the sting out of it in his palms. Barusas just lost it in the daylight. The sun really is beating down here at the back end of winter in Victoria. Zavada just a little bit too overzealous in this game. It looks as though Giancarlo Italiano will turn to his bench now, and he's brought on the big star that was sitting on the pine, David Ball, who was one of the Knicks players who did miss the round of 32, suffering a toe injury and a bout of illness, a real double whammy. Is well enough to be awarded 40 minutes, and he enters the field in place of the youngster Josh Rudland, who gets a pat on the head and a slap on the back. An affectionate one, of course, from Giancarlo Italiano. It was a promising 55 minutes from the 19-year-old. David Ball is a great player to bring off the bench. Arslan inside for Saki with sights of goal. Paulson tips it into the turf. He's had to face a lot of those efforts from range now as Alex Paulson, but for the one decisive moment that separates these sides, he's been equal to it, and he was on this occasion too.
Yeah, his defence is doing a great job in making sure that those aren't too ferocious.
Of course, it is a central theme of the Australia Cup campaigns for these A-League sides. The timing of the competition means that players are still managing their return to full fitness. We saw Jamie McLaren come off. David Ball has entered off the bench for 40 minutes. Jamie McLaren came off at halftime in the round of 32. Are we going to see a similar passage today? He hasn't been cited all that much, but he has been zippy when he has been on the ball. Is it going to be an early shower for him, Bubs, or will they let him run out a potential full 90?
Yeah, just a matter of how many minutes and how many ferocious tackles he gets.
There has been a fair few so far, in fairness. Jugarkovic. Arslan. Here is McLaren flicking it into the air. Leckie was always second best. Great interception from Aziz Bajic. These are the moments that he loves, but he can't find a cross on the first instance. Tees up McLaren, and then Saki. Wow, what a save. A great stop from Alex Paulson. Hamza Saki, the Moroccan, so close to opening his City account, but denied by a great piece of goalkeeping from the young Phoenix stopper.
Yeah, it was great defending by the Wellington Phoenix. Some real depth threat endeavours in there, but just the save from Paulson. Glances it over the crossbar. Lovely to watch.
Jugarkovic. McLaren, the target on the far side, and David Ball is going to be able to pick up possession. It's going to be heading back in the opposite direction. Melbourne City have really got the bit between their teeth at the moment, and Bajic is on the drive, and it's in the middle, but turned away by the Phoenix defence. Weathering a bit of a storm at the moment. So we get another chance to look at what was an excellent save from Alex Paulson.
Yeah, no deflection on the way through on that one. You can see Wellington doing a lot of defending, a lot of numbers behind the ball, trying their best to keep this at a minimal scoreline so they can, get parity again.
Arslan's delivery. Chaos in the middle, and eventually it's a goal kick for Wellington Phoenix. We're going to have to come back from behind or at least force this game to penalties if they will be the team that progresses to the quarterfinals. The comeback stats from last season don't make for the prettiest reading note. Unable to find a single win in the Isuzu Youth A-League last season when conceding the first goal. Record of 0, 4 and 5. So it is statistically and just by sheer fact that they're playing the A-League's premiers, an uphill battle for them. Certainly got the quality out there in the park to do it. But it's Melbourne City who are showing theirs at the present moment. Nuno Reis. Over the top, controlled well by Bajic, and the ever-increasing control of this game by Melbourne City reflected in the clearance count, 21-2 in favour of, I guess, Wellington. They've got the higher number, but it's not a statistic where you want to have the higher number, Bubs.
No, you don't want those clearances on your behalf, unless those equate in transition moments and balls into the front third. It doesn't really matter how many clearances you make if you're still stuck in your defensive half for most of the portion of the game. But, you know, in those tendencies, in those goal kicks, you want to see Paulson try and find pockets of space, because Melbourne City are sitting so high in their pressure that they could find some space if he could just be brave enough to hit that pass. As you see him play out of that dangerous situation there, he does have the capabilities.
Giancarlo Italiano, speaking to him in midweek, he said that going into the round of 32 clash with Peninsula Power, they played just the one pre-season game. They were conditioned, the first team players, for 60 minutes. And of course, they ended up playing 120. Are we maybe starting to see the effects of that extra time period play into things?
Yeah, and it's not always where you see them. They might be still running, but it's that decision making now when you're tired and you're trying to make things happen, you're trying to be creative, that you may feel that little bit of difference.
And they find a moment of quality in behind. That's a really great ball for David Ball. And it's going to be a corner for the Phoenix. Jamie Young not best pleased about that fact.
He just took a deflection on the way through, and Jamie Young managed to get a hand to it and bring it back in, but it was already out by the time he did that. But it was a great run forward by Wellington Phoenix and shot on target. Just a deflection on the way through.
They do have some exceedingly tall timber with which to make these set pieces count to Wellington. Kelly Heald and Zavada, the likely targets for this in-swinging delivery that's knocked away at the near post. Back to Finn Sermon. He led New Zealand's under-20 side at the World Cup. Pretty good campaign for them, all things told, making the round of 16, but Finn Sermon really was a shining light. He's now a fully fledged senior international as well. And his international teammate, Alex Rufer, is giving him a bake at the moment. As the captain concedes a card that he'll feel was a consequence of what was happening around him.
Yeah, he's had to take the almost professional foul in the middle there to stop Leckie from going forward, but he was absolutely livid at his teammate because he's played the ball back to him, you know, in that first sort of instance when they had the corner situation, and all he wanted was the ball back into the front third, and he just took so much time on the ball that Melbourne City were able to set up a really good defence, and then Wellington were caught out at the back.
Nice pass in between the lines and in turn from Tolgai Arslan. Saki. Another corner for City. Another chance at the flags. The pressure continuing to build. It's been a very impressive Melbourne City debut from Hamza Saki. It's going to be his corner as Melbourne City look to make it 2. Zavada flips it away. Bajic Stops and props and feeds Yukolish. Now Arslan. What a Melbourne City building to here. Not much at the present moment. That might be about to change though. Yukolish. Really interesting in those wide areas. They've had to deal with a lot of crosses today, Wellington, but they have been able to stop a fair amount of them, and they've had, in many cases on those flanks, a double coverage to whichever winger or indeed fullback has been asked to cross in the ball.
Yeah, the tall timber at the back there, I can feel Rado Vizicic just wanting them to keep possession. The long ball into the box is not how they're going to score many goals, especially with the height of, you know, McLaren. But Lecky's vertical leap can get over the top of them, but still they're quite tall in the back line.
I saw earlier that Terry Antonis, the man who set up the late winner for Melbourne City in the round of 32, is going to make his way onto the field shortly. Let's take another look at that foul against Marin Yukolish. Costa Barbarouses in the thick of the action once more. And Terry Antonis is going to come on in place of, looks like, Aziz Bayic. Or is he just coming over to have a little natter? In fact, it's going to be Hamza Saki. I think Aziz Bayic is just taking the coach's instructions as to what reshuffles might happen here. And the A-League's first Moroccan, Hamza Saki, is leaving to a round of applause. And so too he should. A really, really solid debut performance at the start of his season-long loan from France. And Terry Antonis, his replacement. We didn't see him in the Isuzu Ute A-League last season. And it's great to see him in a City shirt. He's featured for more clubs than any other player in the Australia Cup, Terry Antonis. A total of 4. He's played for some very, very big clubs along the stretch. Zavada. Down for Pennington, who was at full stretch to feed Kriev. It's a bit ugly in the centre circle. And eventually, after a little bit of time to deliberate his next movements, Lockie Keevers does give a free kick to Wellington.
Yeah, it's just a coming together of bodies. Lecky may have landed on the hand of Krav, especially when you have boots coming together with fingers. It's certainly, although we don't need our hands when we play football unless you're a keeper, they still are required in a lot of the tackles where you're using your hands, so they can be quite painful.
Bushidar Kriev still on the turf. Let's take another look at that tangle just inside the centre circle between he and Matthew Leckie.
Yeah, Kriev gets the ball away, but it's the follow-up clash. Just having Leckie stand on his hand on the way through. And you almost see Leckie kind of crumble in it because you might feel it under your body weight, so you might actually pull out of it a little bit.
Yeah, not a pleasant one for the receiver or the deliverer of that sort of an infringement. Bushidar Kriev, a real mercurial Phoenix talent. Of course, a Bulgarian international of 24 caps. Also with Midtjylland previous to joining the Phoenix, alongside a man who he refers to as his best friend in football in Awer Mabil. It's a decent friend to have if you're making your way to the A-Leagues. He's making his way to the sideline at the moment. And you can see those stud marks on top of his hand. That's a really nasty one. So Phoenix will take their free kick with 10. Over the top for David Ball. Wasn't able to make too much of it. And Jamie Young really hasn't had to make a meaningful save today. The experienced stopper who celebrated his 38th birthday on Friday. Belated happy birthday to you, Jamie Young. Leckie loses out to Rufer and ball. And Kraev is back on the pitch and can exploit some of the space in behind. But will pass further afield, slightly offline. It's mostly been catching practice today, though, for Jamie Young. How do they test the keeper a little bit more?
Yeah,
it's a big question, I guess.
Well, get the ball in the box that's able to be controlled, but also sit in pockets where your 10s can play and you can pick up the ball and exploit the fact that Melbourne City are sitting so high up the pitch.
Leckie. He's been an ever-present thorn in the side of this Phoenix side today. Kraev, his clearance falls kindly to Rufer, who passed it into a testing area for Costa Barbarouses. Sermon. Back to Paulson. Can they pick a gap in this Melbourne City defence? They've been committed over the course of the 90 to knocking it around the back, but it's getting it further afield and finding the holes that's proved the problem, and they might be made to pay here. McLaren cuts it square for Arslan, who should surely have added a second for Melbourne City.
We were just talking about Wellington Phoenix and how tired the legs must be feeling after the 120 last game, and you can really see it as Jamie McLaren puts a lot of pressure on Wooten, and he's able to pick up the ball and square it back to Tolgay Arslan, but the ball bounces just as it arrives at him, just making him off target on that shot.
Can't help but wonder, though. Technically, Tolgay Arslan already does have one goal today. Can't help but wonder, though, if the situation might have been a bit different if the roles were reversed and that was Arslan into McLaren. Melbourne City can't say they haven't had the chances to make it to triple digits for final third entries. Leckie on to the right, but Rufer in the right place at the right time.
A lot of those front third entries come from the pressing technique of Melbourne City and the fact that Wellington are still trying to play football out of that danger. It's great practice for them, but it might cost them an Australia Cup berth in that quarterfinal.
Zavada walking away in the brooding intensity. I think he always has that. Does Oscar Zavada. 15 goals last season. Didn't manage more than one in a single game, which is a real rarity. That's a nice ball in behind for Jokolic. He goes short for Terry Antonis. Inviting cross at the back post is Arslan. Waits for the numbers to arrive. Picks out Leckie. Can he find the shooting angle? Well, they want a handball. They got a couple of penalties for that exact reason in the round of 32. Lockie Keevers is not going to award them one this time around in the round of 16.
Tolgay Arslan just finds the feet of Leckie, and you can see Wellington Phoenix really conscious of the fact that they're inside the box, and any false move can end up in a penalty.
Did strike a hand, but you could see the gestures of Lockie Keevers. His arms were by his side. What else was he supposed to do? City will continue to press their case, though. Ugarkovic. Arslan winds the ball into the box. Zavada has had plenty of headers in the penalty box today, the kind of thing a striker would usually love, but for the fact he's done most of them in a defensive capacity. Ball. Rufer. Tries to return the favour. It's just offline. Wellington will try and lock it in. David Ball hasn't delivered the impact off the bench that he would hope for just yet. Of course, it's the case for Wellington across the board, but particularly for someone who's had bouts of injury and illness recently in David Ball, that he's not quite at 100%. Kelly Heald. Scott Wooten. To Rufa, who wriggles clear of the coverage from Tolgai Arslan. This is better from the Phoenix. Up until that moment. The story of the day for Giancarlo Italiano's side. 20 area entries have largely been fruitless. Payne down to Alex Paulson. It's one of 7 Wellington Phoenix players who, after this, well, they're going to be heading back across the ditch. They all will be doing that, but he'll be heading there for international duty. Selected in the OFC Olympic qualifiers side. Might be called into action here as well. Antonis, edge of the box, rolls it across. Into the middle it goes. McLaren does exactly what you expect Jamie McLaren to do. The goal scorer supreme adds a second for City. And that has them in a commanding position on course to the quarterfinals.
Of course, the ball from Antonis out wide is what actually splits the Wellington defence apart, because everyone's expecting Antonis to pull the trigger, and he draws a lot of the players out to the top of the box, exposing McLaren in behind. But a lovely ball in, and McLaren does not miss from there.
We've seen flashes of their best today, Melbourne City, but that was certainly the most consistent passage. Tolgai Arslan, his race is run. 3 goals in 2 games, a great start to life at Melbourne City. He's replaced by Andrew Nabu. And painfully for members of the Wellington Phoenix fandom, and their team too, Jamie McLaren back to haunt them again. He scored in each of their regular season meetings, a total of 5 goals last year in the Isuzu Ute A-League. It's back to cause them problems again. And barring a miracle, Bubs, you would probably say that puts the pin in any hope of a Wellington comeback.
Especially they can't link up any forward play. They try and keep possession, but the ambush from Melbourne City, as we see, as we speak, it's hard for them to pick up any real meaningful possession and go forward with it.
The tale in the second half has largely been the same as it was the first. Melbourne City controlling the bulk of possession, and they might be about to add to the tally. McLaren strikes again. He loves playing against Wellington, and he loves scoring in front of these fans. The angle to work with was tight, but when you're Jamie McLaren, it doesn't really matter. Three goals for Melbourne City, and that, you dare say, is the pick of the bunch.
And once again, it's Terry Antonis that draws the Wellington Phoenix centrally, allowing McLaren to sit off the shoulder. And when you pick up possession just inside the box, at that angle, the roof of the net is where you want to go.
It's not a rocket from range or a volley or anything like that, but it certainly is a goal you could watch back again a few times. That was
clinical.
A ripping finish.
Clinical.
You expect nothing less from Jamie McLaren. And that was rifled into the roof of the net. probably in consolation territory now, Wellington Phoenix. I'm sure Giancarlo Italiano would love to see a few more attacking flashes from his side. Race. Yeah, the sun was in his eyes. I think all things considered, taking the safe option was the right call, as we have another look at that McLaren finish. You could put that on a loop.
That's top draw from the Socceroo striker. First goal was with his right foot, the second goal with his left. If he can capitalise on a header, you'd have the trifecta.
Short corner for Wellington. Pennington. Well, that just about sums up the kind of day that it's been in attack for Wellington Phoenix. High, wide, and not particularly pretty from Tim Payne. And in their fourth meeting in the Australia Cup, Wellington and Melbourne City, well, they're equaling the record for the most frequent fixture, tying with Melbourne Victory playing Perth and Adelaide playing Sydney FC. Unlike the last two of those four meetings, Melbourne City are going to end the day with a win and a place in the quarterfinals. Paulson had to be careful with the substitute Naboot, the fresh legs bearing down upon him. Antonis, Naboot, Pennington well positioned. Antonis, what a substitute appearance from him, with a header from Finn Sermon. Was touch and go. That was very nearly a fourth for Melbourne City.
I mean, any presence of Jamie McLaren in the box is going to cause defenders to do those sorts of things.
As good as he has been off the bench, Terry Antonis, the corner ball, not his best, but I think Terry Antonis really speaks to the recruitment of Melbourne City this season, not just finding value in a player who, we know his vest is very good, but didn't feature in the Isuzu Ute A-League last season, but also the depth that Melbourne City will need to have as they are engaged, of course, in a deeper Australia Cup run, but in the Asian Champions League too. To have someone like him off the pine, let alone starting, is really valuable when you're going to be playing as many games pretty much as you ever have. Breakaway on here perhaps for Wellington. Ball, Kriev well controlled at the back post. Across for Payne, and Rufer had his pocket picked by Leckie, and there are plenty of runners, one of whom with the ball is Marin Jakolic. McLaren, he's on a hat-trick, squares it into the middle. It took a deflection, and fortunately for Alex Paulson, the deflection wrestled its way into his arms. If you are new Wellington Phoenix head coach Giancarlo Italiano, Bubs, what do you take out of a game like today? Is it just the fitness, the fact we've been able to get a few more legs in? They have struggled to find friendly opponents to build match minutes for these players, or are there other lessons you take out of a game like today?
I would assume that he's looking at the front third and getting the ball up the park, bypassing the players in the midfield if you have to, but also engaging your players into rotating so that they can get on the ball more, even under the sort of pressure that Melbourne City plays. Because once you look at this game, if you're an opposition player in the Isuzu A-Leagues, you're going to think, well, if they're still going to try and play out of pressure here, we just may as well lump on our own pressure and make them falter.
Nuno Reis towards the final 5 minutes of regulation here at Jack Edwards. Certainly time enough for Melbourne City to add to their 3-goal advantage. Not that they need to, but I'm sure they would like to.
But you can just see from the effort and the tenacity from the Melbourne City players that they're all gunning for positions too. So that also increases the pressure onto Wellington Phoenix.
Antonis. Oh, what a pass for Naboo. Race making the run in behind. That is where it heads into the middle for McLaren, who just wasn't in the right body position to make anything of what was a really pleasing on the eye move. And there is going to be one benefit to an otherwise disappointing day for the Wellington Phoenix. Giancarlo Italiano is going to get the chance to hand Wellington Phoenix debuts to 2 of his young brigade. Fergus Gillian, who was an unused substitute, the only outfielder not to feature in the round of 32, is going to come on in place of Nicholas Pennington. And the other man who's already made his way onto the field, Luke Supik, the 17-year-old, whose older brother Adam is a former Wellington Phoenix Academy player. He is a highly regarded talent, the 17-year-old attacker. Won the Oceanic Under-17 Championship with New Zealand earlier this year. And we may see him in the A-League this season as Yakolish sends that one over the fence and into the industrial side behind. It seems as though the injection of youth is going to be the order of the day from here on in. Double sub now for Melbourne City. Anything you can do, I can do better, says Rado Vidicic. Jordan Hall is on to replace Aziz Bayic. He had a very solid return to Melbourne City action. And Matthew Leckie was on fire. He leaves in place of another City debutant, Zane Schreiber, part of a trio of young signings in the off-season alongside Patrick Beach and their winning goal scorer in the round of 32, who is unavailable with a quad injury today in Alessandro Lapane. Seems to be a bit of a growing trend league-wide, doesn't it, Bubs? The continued and increasing injection of youth players. And certainly getting a chance to see a healthy portion of them in the Australia Cup today. So McLaren has turned on the Jets and just about gets the beating of Tim Payne. Yakolish to Suprayan, former Hellas Verona man. Yakolish. Schreiber nods it down for McLaren, who strikes on the turn. Wooten got his body in the way, but Jamie McLaren, only 45 minutes in the round of 32. He'll play a full 90 today, and he is not giving up hope of that hat-trick. .29 touches in the opposition box today for Melbourne City. Many of those in the second half have fallen to Jamie McLaren. An unconvincing punch from Alex Paulson. Ugarkovic. Antonis. To the Frenchman, Samuel Suprayan. Came on into the heart of defence for Melbourne City in this game and hasn't had too much defending to do. Another substitute being readied for the Wellington Phoenix. Isaac Hughes will make his way onto the pitch shortly. Schreiber. Member of the Sydney FC Youth Academy, was playing in their New South Wales NPL side. Melbourne City always with an eye for talent. We're hoping they've picked out another good one in the form of Zane Schreiber. Certainly stands out with the hairdo. Drew Naboo in off the bench. He's going to be battling potentially with some of these young stars for a starting spot. David Ball. Mojidar Kraev. He could flick it through the legs of Suprayan. He's managed by hook or crook to get it around him. Throw for the Phoenix. And that gives them the chance to turn to the bench. And so Scott Wooden, who came on after 58 minutes against Peninsula Power to replace Muhammad Al-Tai, is going to leave the field of play in place of Isaac Hughes, the 18-year-old, who is the third Phoenix player to make their Knicks debut today. Great to see so many youthful faces. Ball hooks one into the sky. And Kelly Heald. Good luck, Andrew Naboo, strong though he may be, getting the ball off Lucas Kelly Heald. Payne. Rufer. Inventive ball in behind to pick out Fergus Gillian. Nice little flashes from the Phoenix Academy player. Ball brings it down. I thought he was brought down by Curtis Good. A wry smile on the face of Curtis Good as Yanni Zizis, the fourth official, adds 4 minutes onto this game. Melbourne City can start to take their mind off this fixture and start to put their mind towards, well, the start of the season, but also which opponent they might like to see in the quarterfinals of the Australia Cup. Still plenty of games left to play on Tuesday and Wednesday, which is after which the completion of those games we will get the official draw too. That's when Melbourne City will find out their fate. A number of really exciting ties upcoming. Our other all A-Leagues affair is on Tuesday night. Western Sydney Wanderers taking on Adelaide United. If it's half as good as their 4-all draw in the regular season, we should be in for a treat. Payne. A great cross. Ball had to double back to retrieve it. Hughes couldn't make much of it. Good asserted his authority and experience. Kelly Heald. And Kraev feints to cross and finds Alex Rufer. Ball. Phoenix finishing with some zip. In behind for Payne. In the middle it goes! And it's cleared off the line. Zavada should walk it in. Oh my goodness. A double clearance off the line, and Kraev now blazes away. Melbourne City's defence fighting tooth and nail to preserve their clean sheet. That was heroic defending on 2 separate occasions. And I dare say it might have denied a Phoenix youngster a debut goal on the first instance. Let's have another look at this, Bubs. This was...
It was a lovely ball in behind initially to Tim Payne. The ricochet almost falling over the net, but the Melbourne City defenders absolutely aggressive in denying the Wellington Phoenix any sort of consolation goal.
You obviously are a neutral observer whenever you're in the commentary box, but you can't help but feel for Luke Suppick. It was his initial chance that was cleared off the line. We had a 15-year-old goal scorer in Quinn McNichol for Brisbane yesterday against Sydney United. We nearly had a very, very young talent in 17-year-old Luke Suppick open his Phoenix account as well. Schreiber launches it away. Obviously, we don't know which teams are going to progress to the quarterfinals and serve as potential opponents for City. Do you want A-League's opposition again, or are you hoping for an NPL team that on paper might give you an easier job of progressing? Although, if the Oakley game was anything to go by, it's easier said than done. Yeah,
the fans just want good games, good football, and I know for a fact that NPL teams always rise to the occasion. They play out of their skins. You know, most of them find themselves in the, the shop front window almost trying to get themselves an A-League gig. So it's always, I don't think it matters at this stage. Quarterfinals, do or die. It's whatever, team you have in front of you, you really can't take it for granted that an easier pathway is even an option.
We'll face anyone so long as we win. That's the most important part. Certainly seemingly put the cue in the rack. Not long left in this game. Perhaps one final chance for the Phoenix. Maybe can take some positives out of these closing 10 minutes. Kelly Heald. Good luck, Terry Antonis. Gillian Zavada. And ball. Is there a last-second consolation for the Knicks? A great cross, Zavada! That's the story of their day at their Wellington Phoenix. And it's the end of their run in the Australia Cup. Melbourne City exact revenge against the team who knocked them out in the previous 2 years. They did enough to create a half-time lead through a deflection off the back of Tolgay Arslan, and they showed their quality in the second. A brace for Jamie McLaren, sending Melbourne City through to the quarterfinals in style here at Jack Edwards. The full-time score, Melbourne City 3, Wellington Phoenix 0. Let's have a look at the goals from this round of 16 tie. And it all started through a bit of chaos on the edge of the box. Some athleticism from Steven Ugarkovic, and then that little touch off Tolgay Arslan. Fortune favouring the Brave.
The athleticism shown by Ugarkovic does result in the goal that was wanted, but probably not his name on the score sheet.
And then in the second half, City really turned on the style. It was a great save from Paulson to deny Hamza Saki a debut. Isuzu Ure League goal. And the press continued to cause problems. Arslan should surely have scored. McLaren would have wished he'd had that chance in the opposite direction. But it didn't matter too much in the end because Jamie McLaren got in on the act eventually.
Yeah, he's just fine. He just found a space right at the bottom corner. And then that final touch is absolutely class. To keep it down, mind you.
And then this, oof, hit with emphasis. And that really symbolises the emphatic nature of this performance for City. McLaren very nearly had a hat-trick, but I think he'll be pretty happy with what he was able to put together in this game, particularly this goal.
And if you're Terry Antonis, you'd be really happy with your performance and his ability to come onto the field and inject some enthusiasm. But there was the last, 5 or so minutes that found Wellington Phoenix a little bit of energy at the end of the day, trying to get that consolation goal.
Hugs all round for Jamie McLaren, no less than he deserves after his performance today. And the stats maybe not quite reflecting the box-to-box control that Melbourne City largely had of this game. The expected goals actually favouring Wellington Phoenix. I imagine quite a lot of that would have come from the late chances that they had, but City controlling the possession, edging the shot count, and putting 3 on the board to send them sailing through to the quarterfinals and put a big smile on the faces in that huddle at the moment. Zane Schreiber pleased with what he's seen. Rado Vidicic, a happy man. Bubs, your final thoughts on today's action?
Yeah, it was a clinical display from an in-form Melbourne City squad that is looking absolutely terrific before the A-League seasons. Wellington obviously feeling the tired legs after their 120 last match, so it might be that just the difference in that for the both teams, but certainly the class of Melbourne City showing through.
Well, it's something that you know well, but City have shown their quality and it always impresses. We'll see more of it in the quarterfinals as they hold that pennant to show their achievement. We'll sign off. Thank you very much for your company, Melissa Barbieri. Thank you very much for your company at home as well. From myself, Lockie Flanagan, on behalf of 10 Play, goodbye for now and enjoy the rest of the Australia Cup round of 16 to come.